So tonight we have one of my least favorite subjects, which is patience. I don't like talking about it because I don't have much of it. But I did want to highlight something from St. Francis de Sales' life in terms of patience, and to say that if anyone can demonstrate the art and practice of patience, this is the person to talk to. As you probably know by now, he came from a distinguished family, was raised with expectations that were commiserate with his birth. His father was anxious for him to have a career in politics and wanted him to study law as a precursor to entering the political arena. But by the time his father was discussing his plans and aspirations for his son's career, Francis already knew he'd been called by God to something different. And if he were me, or if he were a lot of us, he could have just cut his father right off and offended him and hurt him deeply and said, no, don't want to go that way. And instead, he practiced patience. He did a lot of academic work at the Université de Paris and later at Padua in Italy. He earned a doctorate in law by the time he was 24. And during all that time, he also studied theology and practiced mental prayer, preparing himself for his future vocation. But at the same time, he practiced a lot more lively pursuits, probably to please his father. And so was doing things like fencing and equestrian events and all these sort of manly things. Well, God let him know when it was time. One day, as the story goes, this experienced horseman fell off his horse, not one, but 3 times. And every time that he fell, his sword and scabbard came to rest in the sign of the cross. And so, of course, Francis took this as a very strong hint and was ordained. And the patience that he practiced there in being kind to his family and kind to his father, it really did stand him in good stead when later he was called to a mission to Calvinists in Switzerland, which was a pretty daunting task because Switzerland was very Protestant by then. For 3 years, he trudged through the countryside. He had doors slammed in his face. He had rocks thrown at him. His feet froze so badly in the winter that they were bleeding as he was tramping through the snow. This is a man of patience, ladies. His unusual patience kept him working. Nobody would listen to him. Nobody would even open their door. So he found a way to get under the door. He wrote out little pamphlets to explain true Catholic doctrine. He stood to the doors, and it worked. People turned back to the church. So I think that this episode in particular and his life in general really shows us that this was a man of great patience. And I certainly speak for myself when I say I can learn a lot from that.
Okay, yeah, we can turn that one off.
Okay, so sister, we can go to the first slide, the first quotation. Thank you. The need for patience. Again, I'm very happy about all this. So anger had changed the hatred of sin into hatred of the sinner, and most sweet charity into an outrageous cruelty. Thus, there are persons who think one cannot be very zealous unless one is very angry, thinking that unless they spoil all, they can manage nothing. On the contrary, true zeal most rarely makes use of anger. For as we never apply the lancet to the sick, save when it cannot possibly be helped, so holy zeal does not employ anger, save in extreme necessities. So here, what we're starting out with is Francis's advice being amazingly relevant to our own times, as well as what I would call a pretty universal human truth. The reality is that anger comes from a lot of different sources, but its results are almost always the same. And then, as now, we have to understand the consequences of our anger, both for ourselves and for other people. And for those of you who didn't read this or would like to just be reminded, I want to take this and put it back into the context of where St. Francis was talking about it. So I'm just going to read the part that surrounds this. A pagan had led astray a Christian of Candia, recently converted to the faith, causing him to return to idolatry. Carpus, a man eminent for purity and sanctity of life, who, as is very probable, was the bishop of Candia, conceived against this pagan anger stronger than he had ever before entertained. The bishop let himself be so far carried away with this passion, that having risen at midnight to pray according to his custom, he concluded that it was not reasonable that the wicked men should any longer be allowed to live. With great indignation, he beseeched the divine justice to strike down at once with his thunderbolts the two sinners together, the pagan seducer and the Christian seduced. Theotimus, the holy man Carpus, did have just reason to enter into zeal concerning these two men, and his zeal had rightly raised his anger against them. This anger, once moved, however, left reason and zeal behind, transgressing all the tones and limits of holy love, and consequently of zeal, which is but the fervor of charity. Anger had changed the hatred of sin into hatred of the sinner. Anger had changed, and most sweet charity into an outrageous cruelty. So I think you'll agree with me that these are times, the times we're living right now, that call for patience for sure. Unfortunately, that's not what most people are demonstrating. Most people, in fact, are falling back on anger, a lot of it. That's natural. Anger is what we feel when we're too overwhelmed to cope. Certainly, the events of just the past week alone are enough to make everyone angry. But what Francis is calling us to do is to step back from that anger, because anger allows us to personalize things that shouldn't be personalized. And mostly, anger allows us to demonize people. In response to our anger, we say that we hate all Republicans or that we hate all Democrats. We hate the people themselves, not the belief they espouse. Francis is talking about someone who personalized his anger. He didn't just hate what was happening, he hated the people involved. And that is a danger we all run. We see a lot of things that are wrong, that are sinful, and that are destructive. But until we learn patience with the people who are living out some of the things we don't agree with, we're not going to find any inner peace. So I invite you, look at the times when you felt anger recently. Maybe somebody's car cut in front of you on the highway and you were able to brake just in time to keep from hitting them. Maybe you were in a hurry and saw someone at the grocery store with a full cart in the 12-item express lane. Maybe you heard someone boasting that they found a loophole in paying their taxes when you've worked hard on yours to be honest, even if it meant paying more. You may have vented at the person or you may have bottled it up inside, but either way, what I can tell you is the person who's being most hurt by your anger is you. Anger is almost always about us. We think it's about something or someone else, but if we're really honest, it's about us. I get angry when things aren't going according to my plan, and I vent that anger on those I perceive as thwarting me. I always say things will get better when I'm queen of the world, but the truth is that most of the time we think that we're right and that others aren't. I get angry when someone breaks the rules, as we said before, pushes to the head of the line or doesn't pay their taxes or cheats on an examination. But that's really because in my heart of hearts, I wish I had the things they got. So I'm being self-righteous about being the one who followed the rules. So the question is patience the opposite of anger? I think we can say that in some ways it is. Because anger is almost always looking for an immediate solution, for instant gratification. Anger wants action, and it wants that action now. And zeal that St. Francis talks about, zeal on the other hand is patient. Zeal works for what is right. It knows it must wait for the results. Zeal is persevering, it is powering through emotions that cripple us and emerging on the other side, still fresh and still committed to accomplishing a goal. For our second quote tonight, that patience with the idiosyncrasies of another, that bearing with the clownish and troublesome actions and ways of our neighbor, those victories over our own moods and passions, those mortifications of our lesser inclinations, that effort against our aversions and repugnances, that heartfelt and sweet acknowledgement of our own imperfections, the continual pains we take to keep our souls in equanimity, that love of our littleness, that gentle and gracious welcome we give to the contempt and censure of our condition, of our life, of accusation, of our actions, Theotimus, all these things are more profitable to our souls than we can conceive, if heavenly love has the management of them. So it's been my observation that some of the greatest philosophical moments of life come out of cartoons. And a lot of them for me come out of Peanuts, whose anti-hero, Charlie Brown, once remarked, "I love mankind, it's people I can't stand." And isn't that true? We all love our fellow human beings. Abstract concepts are easy to love. It's when they become real in our lives that they become difficult. Because let's face it, other people are annoying. In the wonderful novel, In This House of Breed, which is about nuns living in a Benedictine monastery in the 1950s, author Rumer Godden shares this anecdote. A journalist had come to the monastery to write an article about women living the enclosed monastic life. "Were you surprised that God called you?" she asked one of the nuns, Dame Perpetua. "Well, yes," the nun admitted, "but not as surprised as I was that he called some of the others." We're all a little like Dame Perpetua. We're quick to see, as Jesus pointed out, the speck in someone else's eye while ignoring the log in our own. The problem can be small. It can be that maddening little sniff that the person beside you in the library keeps doing, or the snoring of your spouse that keeps you awake, or your neighbor's refusal to turn down the loud music. And just as it can be small, the problem can also be tremendous. As the events of last weekend have shown us, people who act on passionate beliefs in something which we as Catholics find abhorrent. But our problem is that we always seem to make it about the people. How much easier is it to hate a racist than it is to uncover the racism in ourselves? And how much easier is it to hate a racist than it is to actually do something about racism? We're called, of course, to do something about it, but here Francis is saying, be careful. Don't hate the sinner, hate the sin. Don't personalize everything. You are not the center of the universe. Have patience with others because frankly, right now, they're probably struggling around having patience with you. So he says, "I remember that you said to me how burdensome you felt the multiplicity of your affairs. And I replied to you that it was an excellent means for the acquisition of true and solid virtue. The multiplicity of affairs is a continual martyrdom. For as the flies weary and annoy those who travel in summer more than the fatigue of the journey itself, so the diversity and multiplicity of affairs give more trouble than the weight of the affairs themselves. You have need of patience. I hope that God will give it to you if you diligently ask it of him and force yourself to practice it faithfully by preparing yourself for it every morning, by a special application of some point in your meditation, and resolving to settle yourself in patience throughout the course of the day, or as often as you feel distracted with business." So here we have maybe the most difficult act of patience of all, patience in the day-to-day running of our lives. If you're at all like me, here's what you do. There's some task on your to-do list that you're not looking forward to. Maybe there's some negative emotion that's tied into that task. Maybe it's simply something you don't want to do. Maybe someone's asked you to do it and you're resentful about that. Whatever the case, there's this thing sitting there waiting for you. And of course, you don't do it right away. You push it aside again and again. And every time you do that, it looms a little bit larger until before you know it, that one task has become so insurmountable that it's in charge of your whole day, your whole attitude, and your whole being. As Francis says, the weight of the thing itself is nothing. You're the one who made it heavier. Or maybe it's not just that one item on the to-do list. Maybe it's the size of the whole to-do list. The list may be made up of tasks that are perfectly easy in and of themselves, but the length of the list is what's daunting. This multiplicity of your affairs, as Francis phrases it, can be frightening. At times when I've let my own schedule get out of hand, I've looked at my calendar and I've panicked. There's a tightness in my chest. I feel I can't breathe. There's something that feels like heavy lead in my stomach. I did that to myself. I didn't approach my obligations with patience and prayer. It usually happened around a time when I've been unable to say no. I think that may be true for a lot of us, women especially. We're socialized to be nurturing, to be the ones who sort things out, who make things work. And we equate saying no with being selfish, with not being giving enough, with disappointing someone. But when we don't know how to say no, we find ourselves in the situation Francis describes. Our multiplicity of affairs has become burdensome. So Francis's advice here is so applicable. Start the day in prayer. Start every day in prayer. Be deliberate about your day ahead and ask for guidance. Be specific. Is everything on my list necessary? Am I running around in circles? Is there a way to make this day more deliberate and more fulfilling? Ask for patience. Ask for the gift of saying no before things get too overwhelming. Ask for God to guide you into those tasks that are beneficial and see the others for what they are. And then, here's the trick, be patient. Be patient when you have to ask for the same things tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Because we humans can sometimes be very slow learners. So, place yourself now in the presence of the Lord. I want you to relax and breathe deeply. You can close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. And just breathe. Be conscious of your breath. Take a breath in, hold it, and slowly breathe out. Do that again. Take the breath in and out. Let the cares and worries of this day just fade away. As you breathe, understand that God is with you here and now. You are in God's presence. Now think of something good that's happened in your life since last week. I want you to pay attention to the way in which the Lord has been present to you in that instance. Did you feel happy about it? Did you feel relieved? Did you feel enlightened? Turn now to the Lord with gratitude for this thing or moment that you're holding in your heart. Now think about today or the last couple of days and about any feelings you might have had that are still unresolved for you. Maybe you've purposely bottled those feelings up so you could keep going with your day-to-day tasks. Or maybe you keep going over those feelings and that situation again and again, like a hamster on a wheel, feeling like you're going nowhere. Especially consider times when you've been angry or when something has disturbed you. or when you've lost your patience. Take a moment to pray for enlightenment, to ask God to show you what was truly happening in that situation. And now take this situation and I want you to bring it to God. Imagine wrapping the situation and your feelings about it in tissue paper and holding that package in your hands. It probably feels heavy. I want you to take that package and offer it up to God. Hold it out to Him and ask Him to take it from you. He will. He does. Let it go. Let all your feelings, your tiredness, your anger, your lack of patience, your lack of peace, let it all go. Let God take it all from you. Let go of that package. And now just listen. This is a Psalm of David. Do not get heated about the wicked or envy those who do wrong. Quick as the grass they wither, fading like the green of the fields. Put your trust in the Lord and do right. Make your home in the land and live secure. Make the Lord your joy, and He will give you your heart's desires. Commit your destiny to the Lord. Be confident in Him, and He will act, making your uprightness clear as daylight and the justice of your cause as the noon. Stay quiet before the Lord. Wait longingly for Him. Do not get heated over someone who's making a fortune, succeeding by devious means. Refrain from anger. Leave rage aside. Do not get heated. It can do no good. For evildoers will be annihilated, while those who hope in the Lord shall have the land for their own. This psalm is responding to the problem of evil, which the Hebrew Bible often expresses as a question. Why do the wicked prosper and the good suffer? The psalm answers that the situation is only temporary. God will reverse things, rewarding the good and punishing the wicked. The perspective is concrete and earthbound. People's very actions place them among the ranks of the good or wicked. Each group or way has its own inherent dynamism, eventual frustration for the wicked, eventual reward for the just. Now, imagine being an Israelite. You've been told that you're God's chosen people. You keep the law, you respect the community, you live the way you're supposed to. You're doing it all right. But bad things still happen, don't they? Maybe your daughter gets sick. Maybe you don't have enough money to pay the tax collector. Maybe your business is failing, and that's bad enough to cope with. But to make things worse, the guy down the street seems to be doing just fine. His olive trees are making him a lot of money. His children are healthy. His wife can buy silk dresses from Egypt. And what makes this so unfair is that while you're doing everything right, he's doing everything wrong. He gets drunk. He hits his children. He disrespects the Sabbath. Why is he doing so well? You can feel the anger and hatred starting to grow in your heart. The problem of pain and injustice isn't confined to any day or age. We see it woven throughout the words of the Bible. And remember St. Teresa of Avila, sweeping the floor of her monastery and complaining to God, "No wonder you have so few friends. Look at the way you treat the ones you do." The psalmist is creating songs and verses that his people can carry with them through their day-to-day experiences in life. We hear songs on the radio, and they get us through the day. That's what this psalm is meant to do, to get us through the day. It's reminding us that this isn't new. People have been experiencing anger and jealousy for centuries. And it helps a little to know that we're not alone. And it's also reminding us that it isn't forever. There will be justice. Stay the course. What words do you need to stay the course in your own life? Take a moment now to ask God for them. Ask for the patience so that you can get through whatever unfairness or injustice you're experiencing now. Ask for wisdom to see the difference between the sin and the sinner. With simplicity, express your sorrow for any lack of generosity in your life and your gratitude for any movements you sense toward greater patience through God's grace. And now I'd like you to identify just one step, one thing you can take this week toward a more patient look on life. What's one place where you can set aside your anger? One moment where you can love the person while not agreeing with what they're saying. Think about how you can implement that in your life this week. And pray for the grace and gift of patience.